Hi everyone, my name is Chris Deacy. I'm reader in religious studies at the University of Kent, and I've already spoken about Halloween films and Christmas films, and I thought it'd be a really good opportunity now as we head towards the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, to talk about some love films. And of course, we're in lockdown at the moment. It's also snowing here in East Kent, and many people are not going to be near their nearest and dearest. So what I thought I would do is just talk about a couple of films, three films actually in total, which have a romantic theme, talk through them. They're all films which I've seen, one of them at the cinema, gosh, in the days when we could go to the cinema, and the other two on either Amazon Prime or on Blu-ray in the last few months during this second, or is it third lockdown? I've lost count. But I'm going to start with Dirty Dancing. And this is a film which often shows at the cinema around Valentine's Day. I actually saw it in the summer, and there I am outside Cineworld in Ashford, about to see this one Sunday afternoon. And it's actually interesting because I saw the stage version of Dirty Dancing before I saw the film. I'm sort of going back now about a decade, and I can see why the experience was a bit underwhelming, because if you know the film, or for that matter, if you know the stage musical, the holiday and the lake resort backdrops that appeared on the screen behind the dancers in the West End looked like a movie set, and the songs which define the film were pre-recorded. Now, it was all about the dancers, who were undeniably spectacular, but the film works because the dancing is one of several key components, and which makes the whole project fit together so well. We have the 1963 setting in the summer before JFK's assassination, and the film works as a treatise on the end of an era, the end of innocence, perhaps, mirroring the tropes at the heart of the film, in which a teenage girl goes on holiday with her parents to an upmarket resort where recreation takes the form of the foxtrot and games of charades. Her doctor father wants to do his best for his daughters, but his patriarchal attitudes, while honourable, are stifling to his youngest daughter, Baby, who is put in a corner in more ways than one. She goes in search of something that represents more the embryonic zeitgeist of the age and finds it in Dirty Dancer Patrick Swayze, who is rather less inhibited when given freedom on the dance floor than the older generation establishment allows him to be. And the two become embroiled on the dance floor and the bedroom and end up tutoring each other in the ways of dancing and in integrity. The daughter, in turn, coaches her father into understanding that she needs to find her own way in a changing world, and that her father's admonishments and attempts to control where she goes and who she hangs out with are utterly counterproductive. She doesn't belong in her father's generation, and she can make her own mark in the world, the mistakes, the life lessons, and the relationship choices, and we inevitably cheer her on. Now, there's a Capra-esque twist, which, like Back to the Future, sees our heroine leave the innocence of the Bedford Falls-like log cabin, like the Hill Valley of Back to the Future, for disco hell, or heaven, like Hell Valley indeed, in Back to the Future, where she comes of age and has to navigate her way in a world which she hasn't been prepared for, but where she earns the trust of Swayze's kid from the wrong side of the tracks. And the two of them, in a pair of hungry eyes, if you know the film, you know what I mean, have the time of their life. Okay, you see where this is going. And no, they have never felt like this before. Okay, I swear it's the truth. Now, Dirty Dancing is a nostalgic-fueled rites of passage movie, which works so well because it gets to the heart of why we are always seeking something that defines us and which drives us all the more to it, because our parents tell us we are not allowed to do it. Baby's Odyssey is no different, really, from Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, with her call to adventure, initially refusing it, but then meeting her mentor, crossing the threshold, passing the test, and so on. Well, it's no wonder it has stood the test of time. And remember, if you know the scene that you can see on the screen in front of you, nobody puts Baby in the corner. let's turn to When Harry Met Sally. Rob Reiner directed this back in 1989, and it's a deceptively charming film. At first, When Harry Met Sally comes across as Woody Allen light. The ending is actually straight out of Manhattan, with the romantic anti-hero running across New York in order to declare his love for the woman whom he has hitherto A, spurned, and B, lost all respect from. Now it's his last chance, his last ditch opportunity to turn the tide and be accepted as a relationship partner by the eponymous Sally. There I am watching the film just before Christmas, and it's the kind of film which, because of its setting, some of it is set over Christmas and New Year, but also very much, I think, in the light of Valentine's Day. It's kind of a perfect rom-com, but it really works because it does a good job, I think, of critiquing the very edifice. It plays to the galley, if you like, but it also critiques the very norms and conventions of the rom-com. So it works on multiple levels. It's ostensibly set against the backdrop of New Year's Eve, but there's a lot of flashback and indeed flash forward throughout the film. There's something beguiling, actually, about this scene, which is meant to be an ironic commentary on the staples of rom-coms, with their do or die, their moment is now, their happy ever after escapist predilections. It was written by Nora Ephron, who went on to direct the quintessential old-fashioned 90s rom-coms, Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail, also both starring Meg Ryan, forever typecast as the cute damsel just waiting for her knight in shining armor. But When Harry Met Sally doesn't lay it on as thick as those other films, which were good at recreating the Hollywood romance of yesteryear and made unironic, sweeping romance fit the technologically savvy and culturally restless 90s. Instead, it presents and critiques the age-old question of whether male-female friendships can ever last when their friendship mutates into a sexual relationship. Must their one night of intimacy necessarily destroy all that has come before, whereby both partners move from confiding in one another about their respective relationship disasters to becoming one themselves? And without the ability to go to the other as confidant, they no longer have anything to offer one another outside of recrimination and hurt. Now, Harry is sensitive, but it's the kind of guy who will happily sleep with a woman he knows he is going to dump the next morning. For him, relationship incompatibility is not a barrier to a one-night stand. Sally, on the other hand, is in search of a permanent mate and is perennially distraught when her dates lead to catastrophe. Harry and Sally's tacit acceptance that even though they may find each other attractive, a relationship is off the cards, makes for a perverse viewing experience as we wait to find out whether A, a sexless relationship can ever work, and B, once they have sex, their friendship can endure. Now, 30 years after it was made, human nature has not fundamentally changed. We still make the same mistakes, and even those of us who know the film well, quote it even, are still disposed to mess up, even though we should know the lesson well enough by now. It doesn't always feel like a particularly substantial film. It's light, it doesn't have any thriller or action sequences, and it gets by substantially on wordplay. But this is to its credit, and it works because it gently ribs us. We are game for a laugh. And then after the movie, what do? Well, we carry on acting like Harry and or Sally. It's that rare thing, a comedy where the filmmakers are laughing at us more than we are laughing at them. And now, what a treat. This takes us all the way back to 1959. It's Pillow Talk. This is such a beautiful film. I do a podcast on nostalgia, and one of my most recent guests is Tamar Jeffers MacDonald, who is the world's leading expert on Doris Day. And of course, doing research for my podcast, I watched Pillow Talk a couple of nights before the interview. And one of the incongruities that I associate with Pillow Talk is seeing Albert Finney and Shirley Ann Field in the film Saturday Night and Sunday Morning, one of the grittiest kitchen sink dramas that Britain has produced, leaving a cinema in Nottingham where they have just been to see Pillow Talk, made the previous year in 1959. Now, Pillow Talk is bright, garish, and opulent. It's worlds apart from Carol Rice's grim tale of a factory worker who gets a married woman pregnant. Now, ironically, a related motif runs through Pillow Talk, but it's based on the comedy of misunderstanding as Rock Hudson inadvertently walks into a maternity waiting room. And claiming to have stomach pains and requiring an appointment for himself, the receptionist assumes he must be expecting a child. Now, Pillow Talk does have some real-life resonances. When I was growing up in the late 1970s, my parents shared a party line with a neighbour down the road, and it meant we couldn't always use the phone when we wanted to, something that feels quaint by today's standards, when every individual in a household tends to own their own mobile phone and phone companies are not restricted by the shortage of numbers that they can give out. Now, Pillow Talk won the Oscar for Best Screenplay, and it beat North by Northwest, which gives an indication of just how stiff the competition was in 1959. But it's an opulent and beautifully choreographed comedy of manners, with Doris Day's old maid complaining to the phone company that she has to share a party line with a songwriter who seems to spend every waking moment on the phone to a pretty young girl, any pretty young girl. Day tries to interrupt him and is forced to question whether her motives are jealousy related. Does she secretly want a Lothario to sweep her off her feet? Rock Hudson wreaks revenge and pretends to be a virile, chivalrous Texan, strangely reminiscent actually of the character John Voight aspires to be in Midnight Cowboy. And his seduction works until she realizes she has been had. Now, this part of the film doesn't sit easily with the all-round fluffiness. It's not that funny to meet someone who appears to be the perfect catch and who professes love to you, and all along they are stringing you along and telling you what it is that you want to hear. Now, these days we might call that grooming or gaslighting. And there's an especially uncomfortable scene when the son of one of Doris Day's character's interior decorator clients tries to grab her in the car when they go out for a ride and won't take no for an answer when she makes it clear that she doesn't want to be kissed or groped. Pillow Talk is a battle of the sexes comedy, and it exudes charm, fashion, and style. But it isn't as innocent as it looks, and it is deceptively subversive in the way it raises questions of trust. Sexuality. I mean, actually, there are some scenes where Rock Hudson is presented as a philandering heterosexual, which belies the secret that Hudson concealed all his life. And the revenge, though conducted through smiles, fur coats, and gaudy apartment decorations as you see on the screen, I think could, with albeit quite a few tweaks and twists, make for a sensational, Tarantino-esque black comedy. Like all three of the films I've just described, Pillow Talk is simply perfect.